Hello, everyone. The intention for today's episode was for my very good friend May and I to share our spontaneous Costa Rica experience. But whenever May and I sit down to talk, anytime, there's always three things that are guaranteed. One, amazing company. Two, lots of laughter. She brings it out of me. And three, it's like entering a cozy haven of deep conversations. And to let you all in on a little secret, with all my guests on this show, making them feel, comfortable and cozy is my top priority. So if we ever touch upon a topic that is a bit too personal or makes them a tad uneasy with sharing it with the world, I reassure them that we can always hit that gentle rewind button and try another path. But what's truly touching is that May wanted to share this episode with all of you because she knew her story could be a source of inspiration and support for other women facing similar struggles. And I couldn't be prouder of her bravery. In our fast-paced world, many of us struggle with overthinking and worry that leaves us feeling overwhelmed or stuck. In this podcast, we will hear stories of successful individuals and have conversations on ways to reach our true potential by embracing every micro detail of our identity, especially the flaws that make us unique. This is your host, Maria Grace Wolk. I'm a Filipino-American entrepreneur, psychotherapist, and mom of two boys. And my mission is to amplify diverse perspectives and experiences and inspire your journey to wellness and fulfillment. May, thank you so much for joining me. Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes. Hi. First off, thank you so much for inviting me over to your podcast. Super excited when you asked me to be a part of your podcast. So for everyone else out there, my name is May, born and raised in San Jose, literally just turned 41 a couple days ago. And in addition to that, being a part of the corporate world and working for an awesome startup company called Spec, looking to do amazing things on customer journey management. And I am happily married with my husband, Jonathan Wong, and looking to grow a family. Or we are going to grow a family. We are going to have a family.
You are.
Yes.
May is the reason why we did this spontaneous trip to Costa Rica. And our friendship goes way back. I think we've known each other a long time, over 20 years, I think, right? Over 20 years.
Yeah.
And it was through our passion for Tahitian and hula Polynesian dancing is what brought us together through Oteapi in Fremont. We've had other experiences in the past where our trips have been so amazing, including Tahiti. And we just never thought it could be topped, right? Until this year when we go to Costa Rica.
100,000%. Yeah. And I feel like very repetitive because almost every single person that I talk to, I'm like, oh my God, Costa Rica was the best. And then I just go off on a tangent, like outside of whatever conversation I had previously. And I'll just start talking about it. And yeah, it really was life-changing for me. The initial reason why I wanted to go on this trip to Costa Rica was one, I knew because I was transitioning from one job to another. So I had this 1 week of do anything. So because of that, I knew I wanted to go on a trip somewhere to really de-stress and to reset because I had been on this fertility journey for, I don't know, 2, 3 years. And then in addition to that, I was working at a very high level, super hostile, and very toxic environment, which I knew was not good for my well-being, which is why I left. Like to answer your question, it was to reset and it was to de-stress. The outcome of that was much more than that. Like I did not know, like then going to Costa Rica, it was so transformational for me. I didn't know, like what I learned about myself was I'm too much of a type A person. I didn't realize that. And that was called out by a healer that I had met. Two, uncovering or discovering how much trauma I have experienced in my childhood. But not only that, but like generations before me. So a lot of I didn't realize like how much emotional trauma I was experiencing or I had experienced and had stuck in myself and how much that I had let go. I wasn't trying to experience that in Costa Rica. Like how did that how did that I was it like why would I all of a sudden I want to learn about generational trauma or emotional trauma. Like that was not
Having a trauma therapist as
that
your
was
roommate.
Nothing to do with it.
do that. I just want it was just like I just want massages every day. Like I didn't know that I was going to be coming into this trip and tapping into that about myself. And that is something that I learned.
And it was nice to be able to, after each session we had or an experience we have, a treatment that we get to process it with each other. I think that was helpful because it locks it in. Therapy thing that we do, like journaling, right?
Yeah.
To lock the experience in. So you talk about it or you write about it. And then we had each other to kind of talk about it.
Yeah,
It
and
locked it in.
that felt so good. That felt so good.
Yeah.
And it was awesome to share that with someone, especially with you. Post trip, now I'm tapping that into that even more, like tapping into my subconscious and how much that has affected me or can affect me and what can I do about it to help me be a better person, you know?
That's beautiful.
Yes. And prior to that, like where we ended up like reconnecting in Santa Cruz,
Yes,
which kind of
that's
led,
right.
which kind of led to us like going to Costa Rica. Like, what were the odds?
It was just a random weekend where my family and I just decided let's just do a weekend getaway to Seascape in Santa Cruz. And it's been a while since we've been there. And we forget about this place. We forget about how beautiful it is.
Yeah, so it was this past February, and I remember like Johnny and I have been on this fertility journey, and it's been about 3 years, or maybe a little more than 3 years. And on the day of my embryo transfer, I had an embryo transfer around that time frame, and unfortunately, it was not successful. And I remember being very heartbroken, shattered. It was another disappointment. And my husband was like, well, let's go somewhere for the weekend to just relax. And it was Seascape. And what were the odds that you would also be there too? And it was awesome to see you and talk to you because we haven't seen each other in so long. But it was just so refreshing to see you and to see you there at Seascape and really catching up on life. And like 3 weeks later, we're like going to Costa Rica together. Like
Right?
it was like God was speaking to each other at that moment and just wanted the both of us and knew that the both of us would be going on this amazing trip to Costa Rica because it's something that we needed, but didn't know that we really needed. And it's still a trip that I will forever talk about. My friends and family are probably annoyed by me how much I talk about Costa Rica, but it really was a life changing trip slash experience ever. And it's equally as life changing as the one that we went to in Tahiti, where we spent like the whole summer in Tahiti. Like what
Oh
could
my
top
God.
that?
That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
We were totally in a different place in our lives then, but that experience was also just as amazing because we get to do what we love, dance and
Yeah. So
yeah.
much fun. And it was really awesome to just catch up, right, on life. And it's funny because I remember the one question that you asked me on that when I saw you at CC was like, well, how are you doing? Right. And I'm like, I'm fine, except this just happened to me, right? Like with IVF. And for anyone who's listening and who has been on a fertility journey, it's not easy. It's very emotional. It's draining. It just has so much heaviness in you, like whether it's emotionally, physically, mentally, all those things. And that is what I was experiencing that weekend. But at the same time, I was like trying to feel okay and being hopeful. And
How like during our like one-on-one in Santa Cruz.
I remember the question you asked me was like, how are you feeling?
Like, I'm fine, but I'm like going through my fertility journey. And then later to find out, like, I learned that I wasn't really fine.
I'm like, I'm okay. But really deep down, I really wasn't. Because
after discovering all these things about me that I didn't even really know existed, like, how did in an hour was able to help me release all these things I did not know I had in me.
And I don't know where I'm going with this, but later to find out, it was like me during the trip of Costa Rica. I was like accepting it, like, no, I was not okay. I'm not okay. So, but after that, I was so happy. I was such a happy person out of that trip. Like,
And I feel, and the more I think about it, I'm like, no, I want to be more open, just because a lot of women aren't open about it because there is like this negative connotation to it. But we should be more open to it because it is common. And all the feelings that I feel are all very valid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about it because it's a thing.
Right. Even your process of deciding to share it.
Yeah.
And May, I think that you sharing is making a difference. So thank you for being so genuine and open.
Yeah. Yes. You know, and I do want to talk about it because learning to let go, and what I learned like on the trip, right, to Costa Rica was like, I didn't realize I was always trying to be like, oh, this perfect person, or I always like, why do I need to be perfectionist, or why do I need to accomplish all these things in life? And I think for me, I've always kept it in me, like with my fertility journey, is because sharing it to me, it felt like I didn't feel accomplished, or like that I'm not perfect. But in actually, I mean, that's just what it is. And I was embarrassed about it. You know, I still this like I'm getting emotional about it right now, but that's what it is. But then now that I'm talking about with more people about my fertility journey, like when it is like one-on-one, like me and you, like when we talk about it, I'm open, more open when I talk about it. And when I'm talking about it with people, I'm catching myself saying more women should talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, you know what? I should be more open talking about it too, like even publicly, because it's a thing. Yeah. And it's not easy.
Yeah, I love that. I'm happy that you're at that spot because that means you're feeling really empowered and you know that there's nothing wrong with you. I even want to say that our culture has a lot to do with our conditioning, right? Because you're just reacting, you're behaving in a normal way based on abnormal situations where we were taught to always strive for perfection because they're so proud of you when you are. And it feels good. As children, we just know what makes our parents happy. And that is they don't realize they are conditioning us to want to attain that, to feel loved.
I will say though, I give it up to like my mom though, because when I do share my moments about my fertility, like my mom she's so supportive. It's okay. Don't let whatever like other people are telling you or making you feel like when it's time. And I'm like, okay. So she, like, at the same time, my mom, like, even though like when we were younger, when I was younger, like we were conditioned to get good grades, and because like when I would get good grades, like my mom would tell the whole world,
right? She's so proud.
Proud. And so because like when she would do that, I'm like, oh my God, I have to like I have to be that person because she's telling everyone like I have good grades. So now I constantly always have to have good grades, because now there's this standard, or my mom has set the standard for me that I set for myself, but she set it for me. But yeah, anyways, I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I know where you were going. Like, it's not really our parents' fault either, right? Because our parents are just cycling through probably the same parenting that they got, where it's really all rooted from fear. They want you to get good grades so you can get a good job and you can get a good career so you can have money, because money is safety. And a lot of Filipinos came from poverty, and poverty is trauma. So because that's ingrained in them, and you learn that it's generational trauma. It's somewhere in their genetics that they fear poverty. They're going to make sure that the people that they love so much doesn't fall into poverty. They have to do what they can to make sure they get good grades so they can get a good job, so they can belong in the society where, you know, being successful and being rich is a way to be safe. It's really just love. It's just the way for them to show love. To be self-aware is the way to really break those generational trauma that keeps repeating.
For
right?
sure. For sure.
I'm glad that you have gotten to this point where you are feeling like, this is me. This is what I can do. It's like using your own power.
Yeah, exactly. And what else was transformational for me is I am now even more self-aware and more in tune with my feelings versus my subconscious and not knowing what I'm feeling. Now I'm just like all up in my feelings. And it's that, or maybe because like I'm also getting older, because now I just turned 41 and you're just a little bit more wiser and older. I'm just like all up in my feelings. But I love that about myself. And not only am I Filipino, but also I'm an only child. So even as growing up as a Filipino child, it was disrespectful. It was always very disrespectful if I were to yell back at my parents if I got in trouble. And so in the event when I would get in trouble, I had no one to turn to. Like I couldn't yell back at my parents. I couldn't yell at anybody. I couldn't vent to anybody because back then it was just me. I had my cousins, but it's not like I could easily it's not like I had a cell phone at the time and just like text somebody or call somebody right away. I would have to keep all my feelings to myself. So then growing up, in the event, I always kept feelings to myself. And that's something that I learned probably recently, maybe like in the last 10 years, I've learned that about myself, is that I just always kept my feelings to myself subconsciously and not learning how to really express my feelings outside of me, because I've been wired to keep everything in.
Yeah, like it's your job to just keep it together. Do you remember as a child when, let's say, you're upset and you're sad about something? What do you think about yourself at the time? Do you remember?
That I don't remember. That's a good question.
Like, how are you feeling?
Obviously sad or like frustrated, but then I think it's like to the point where I'm just now numb. So anything that comes or would come in, it was just like, okay, well, I'm mad. And then it would just like it would just like subconsciously, I have no idea.
Disappear.
It would just disappear. Exactly. It would just disappear. So in some ways, shape, or form, it's also like subconsciously building thick skin where it's like it no longer bothers me, but subconsciously it is.
Yeah.
Oh, it is that Filipino culture where you really are built and trained to have really thick skin. So anything that does come at me or come at like anybody, it's like it also would never faze me. Wow. Which is odd. It's like it's weird. I don't, yeah, I've talked about it with like my cousins too, like when like our cousins are like get together and everyone like makes fun of each other or like just does all these things. We are wired where it doesn't faze us consciously, but I think subconsciously
it does.
It does. Yeah.
It kind of builds up. We've learned to label ourselves that because it's like we're feeling something, but yet we're not supposed to. So we push it away, or we feel like something is wrong with us if we're feeling sad, like we're not supposed to feel sad.
Feel sad.
Yeah. So, because what would you do with that feeling? And sometimes they're so strong and you cry and maybe you hide in the bathroom, and then that's when you start hiding yourself, and then you start hiding your true identity, right? Because then you feel like I cannot show up as myself. So I have to mask myself every time I'm in social settings. And when you're masking yourself so much, you start to lose who you are. And that's when you grow up in this world feeling, what the hell do I want? How am I feeling? Like we start becoming so out of tune with our emotions. We don't know what that means. So like when we're feeling this way, what's like, you can't describe it. When your feelings are dismissed and your sadness are dismissed, you start to internalize that as it's not okay. So then you grow up with no emotions, and then you kind of start questioning because I mean, it's still there. You're just not acknowledging it, and you're just ignoring these parts of you that wants to come out, and eventually they're gonna hold a tantrum. They're gonna try to come out in other ways, anger, jealousy. It's expressed differently, and it's expressed in ways that are more accepted. Like anger is more accepted than sad in our culture for some reason. It's okay to be angry. So I feel like that's where I went. Instead of being sad, I got angry. My way of coping was to be angry.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's so crazy.
Yeah. And I see that. Like I see that with a lot of Filipinos for sure.
Oh yeah.
Or just Asian culture. Yeah.
Yes. It's sad. And it's sad when I see kids, when I see it, and when I see a situation happening and it's just, don't cry, stop crying. I just can't. And it's hard because nobody wants to be told how to parent their own child, buddy. And I get it. So sometimes it's really hard for me to just see.
Because then they're trained to be like, oh, so crying is bad. I can't cry. Even though I want to cry, but now I'm not allowed to cry because that's not a good thing, which it also sucks too.
Yeah. And then it gets built up, and then your body gets stuck under stress mode. You're always stuck in stress mode. And then you start building all those cortisol and things that you don't want in your body. And you're not going to be able to sleep because you have all that building up. And then it becomes physical illness. And then you get sick, and then it all starts within.
Yes.
But yes, I love that we're talking about this will become like a 2-part series.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So then for part 2,
let's pick ones that we are going to discuss,
like Ayurveda, sound healing, crystal healing, all of that. So
yes. Oh my God.
There's so much to talk about.
Oh God. So good. Yeah, I'll talk about I did not know I was going to come out crying 5 times. I did not know that it was going to be life-changing. And now it's a forever trip that will both hold forever in our hearts.
And we will definitely say more on that on the part 2 of this episode. So please stay tuned for that next episode. It should come out shortly. And just want to say thank you so much to my friend May for being incredibly brave to share her journey while still in the midst of it all. It takes an immense strength to open up about something so vulnerable and challenging, and I just truly admire your honesty and vulnerability. Because your willingness to share can be a source of inspiration for others going through similar struggles. And may those of you listening who resonates with my friend May, I hope that you too find it in your heart to know that you are not alone. If you resonate at all with the stories on this podcast, and you're thinking about a change in your current situation, in your career, in your relationship, or maybe even in yourself, what's holding you back from taking the first step? Find out by taking the What's Your Biggest Self-Sabotage quiz that you can find on my website at mariagracewolf.com. Until next time, stay kind and own your journey. Thank you again for your time today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to hit subscribe, rate, and review. I would so appreciate it. The high rate and reviews will help others find the podcast so we can amplify, normalize, and break the mental health stigma. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered.
This is given with the understanding that neither the host or the guest are providing legal, mental health, or other professional information. If you need a professional, you should find one. This podcast does not substitute for personal professional services.